Hey guys, it's Cheryl.
And it's Jesse here.
And today we wanted to talk about how we found our first apartment in Amsterdam. We moved here from Canada, and so we kind of wanted to give an expat's perspective in terms of how you find your first temporary apartment, your permanent apartment, and just like how to move here in general.
We did move here to Amsterdam back in August of 2019.
Yeah.
And a little bit of context. I found a job prior to moving to Amsterdam. So the company that I am working for relocated Cheryl and I, which included giving us 1 month of free temporary housing. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, totally. And I know it's like a complete luxury. So just to give you a little bit more context, like it's going to be this video is going to be from the perspective of our experience having the help from a company that was willing to help us in all of these administrative tasks. But we will at the end of this video kind of give you some general tips in terms of how a North American expat might be able to find their apartment even if they don't have sponsorships from a company.
Yes, so the company that worked with my company that brought me over to Amsterdam, they had an additional service that we can pay for to help us find an apartment when we got here to Amsterdam. And we decided before we moved that we were going to do it and work with them. And it was very helpful. Because
basically an agent, like a rental agent.
Before we even moved, we gave our requirements to the rental agent of what we were looking for. So we were looking for a 1-bedroom apartment, maybe with a den, somewhere that's maybe 20 minutes bike ride away from my office, somewhere central.
Yeah, and transit friendly, like somewhere where you can walk to, or preferably not biking distance, but walking distance to transit, with grocery stores around and coffee shops, and just kind of like a semi-lively area that we can settle in. We were preferably looking in the Pipe, which is in kind of like the south of the Circle of Amsterdam, or in the west of the Circle of Amsterdam, just because we feel like those areas were just a bit more central, and we just had friends kind of that were living in those areas, so we preferred to be closer to them. But all of these requirements, and one other thing that was really important for me was the furniture. Because we were looking for a furnished location, we could also give kind of our expectations of how the apartments were furnished. So we were very like minimalistic people who like modern style. So we also gave her those, the person that we worked with, our agent, those requirements as well, including like lots of sunlight, because we knew we were going to be filming these videos. So we needed a lot of like natural sunlight and just like space. White spaces in the house, clean white spaces. So
before we even got on our flight to move here to Amsterdam, we've already had 3 listings scheduled the week that we got to Amsterdam.
Yeah, which was so exciting. We're like, wow, like this is all happening so quickly. And I think that's one of the perks of working with an agent, right? Like we literally didn't have to do anything. We just told her like all of our wants and needs.
The company that we worked with was called the EXPATS Housing Network. So they did all of the scheduling of the open houses, and then if there was a place that we really liked and we wanted to submit an application for, they would handle that all for us.
Yeah, so we'll link that company, EXPATS Housing Network, in the description below, so you can reach out to them if that's something that you're looking for. I'm sure there are other like rental agents out there as well, but because they were specifically for expats, the girl that we worked with, she was actually Canadian herself, so that was kind of nice that she understood our needs and just like understood from our perspective what we were looking for, because she was a Canadian expat once upon a time as well. So it was really helpful to have someone completely English speaking with the same accent as us, so it was great.
And there was also another good important thing with going with an agent is the peace of mind. Is there's a lot of scams when it comes to renting in Amsterdam. So when you work with a company like EXPATS Housing Network, they kind of take that fear and take that fear away.
Yeah, and that's a really great point, because we have heard that there are a lot of scams, because Amsterdam is there's a lot of people who are living here and a lot of expats, and locals kind of know that there are a lot of expats who want to move here. So you just want to make sure that you are, especially with your first temporary apartment, that you're getting somewhere that's legit. Because we have heard that there are a lot of scams, because one of the easiest ways to find an apartment here is through Facebook groups, and because it's a free group, like anyone can join, there's a lot of potential scam issues with that, and because you're looking for an apartment potentially before you even move here, that also gives a lot more space for scamming to happen. So just be very careful, and we didn't want to deal with that, so we decided that going with an agent is probably the best way. So all of our contracts are in English, and we didn't really have to work directly with the real estate agent from the renter's side.
And I guess if there was a con with going with an agency like Expat Housing Network, is you are going to be paying a premium. There is a fee that you have to pay, but again, you weigh all the pros and cons. You pay a fee, but you get a peace of mind that you're not being scammed. Yeah,
the fee is usually 1 month of rent. I think that's pretty standard anywhere you use a rental agent for. But because rents are so expensive in Amsterdam, that first month fee is quite expensive. So just keep that in mind. But for us, we were like, you know what, like, we don't want to think about it. We don't want to worry. We knew it's going to be super hard. So let's just pay it. I know it's going to be worth it, especially for our first apartment.
And one other thing too, sometimes they get listings that doesn't get published on a rental website or even Facebook groups, because they have connections with realtors around the city.
Yeah, exactly. So you might be able to hit a gem and a listing that might not even have been listed out. So that's one of the great things. All right, so once we got to Amsterdam, our very first apartment was that 1 month stay that the company sponsored us for, and it was in the heart of Jordan, which was amazing. We didn't know how amazing it was before we got there, but when we got there, we realized it was like the most picturesque part of Amsterdam that we've been to. There's tons of like cute little boutique shops and canals, and it's just like a lot of heritage homes there. So that was really amazing. And that apartment was actually a super small space. It was basically, what do you call those? Like a suite?
A studio.
A studio.
If you want to see what that looked like, watch our first video, because we did film from that studio, and then we did talk about our experience there. So we'll link it somewhere in the video or down below.
It was the smallest space, like one room. It had like a tiny kitchen, our bed, a tiny table, a TV, and then like a tiny little bathroom with a shower in it. And yet it was cute, but we had like 6 luggages with us at the time. So we're like, okay, we gotta hurry this up. At first we're like, we're getting this deal for this 1 month stay, but honestly, we can't stay longer than like a couple weeks maybe, or maybe even just 1 or 2 weeks, because the space was so small. We had nowhere to actually walk around with 6 luggages on the floor. So that was crazy.
But you do get the security. If you have the luxury of having temporary housing for free by company, you get the security of having a place to stay for at least a month, and then you can take your time to look for your permanent home.
Exactly. So basically at this apartment, the first week we already had scheduled apartment viewings with our agent. So that was really exciting. I think by the 3rd day, we were already looking at like 1 to 2 apartments. And then for the next couple of days, we were like looking at about 1 to 2 apartments per day. I think in total we had like 6 apartments that we looked at, and that experience was so fun. It was in the middle of the summer. Our agent was amazing and like scheduled the listings based on our schedule, and then we got to see a couple of apartments, and it was really fun because the experience of seeing these apartments were so different than when we were apartment searching in Vancouver, Canada. In Vancouver, Canada, most apartments are pretty standardized. Like a lot of them will look pretty much the same. They're boxes, open space kitchen.
It's all cookie cutter templates.
Exactly, cookie cutter kind of apartment. So you just want to make sure that you like the neighborhood and the price, and then it's clean and the landlord maybe you get to meet. But other than that, it was like all the same. But in Amsterdam, every apartment that we saw was so unique. They all had different like kind of architectural layouts. And there were a lot of things that were not standard in our opinion. For example, like the washrooms were all different, and it was different for us to see like the shower spaces here, because in Vancouver, usually you get a bath or a bath shower or just a shower, but they're all like pretty much the same looking. Like you'll have your glass doors, or you know, like the bathtub would be like a standard size. But here, like showers look different in every single apartment. Some of them didn't have shower curtains, they didn't have like glass coverings. Some of them were just like one big room of a bath, and like it was just everywhere.
Apartments in Amsterdam, some of them were built 70 years ago, some of them were built over 100 years ago, 200 years ago. So there's lots of different history behind the different design of these buildings, and that's why we have different variations when we were shopping around.
Yeah, and I actually love that because it made each apartment viewing so unique, and it was just so fun to see like all the different types of apartments here, and obviously the different neighborhoods that surround that apartment. So overall, I love the apartment viewing experience, but it was very rushed. It was basically like we go see the apartment, we love it, we don't, we make a decision, we go on to the next one. And finally, I think by the end of the first week, actually, we went to an apartment that like recently got listed, which is where we are right now. And we went to see that listing. We saw the photos and we were already like sold. We're like, okay, we gotta calm down in case it's like not perfect, right? We came to this apartment to view it, and immediately we both fell in love. We like looked at each other during the apartment view, and we're like, oh my gosh, this might be the one.
I think we showed up at 11 a.m. in the morning, fell in love with it when we first saw it, and then when we finished the viewing, the agent asked, do we like it? Do we want to submit an application? So we said yes. And
pretty much immediately.
And then by 2 p.m. we submitted the application, and then by 7 p.m. at the same day at night, our agent called us and said we got the apartment.
Yeah, and I wanted to like put this in here too, like if you like an apartment that you see, you need to respond immediately, because apartments go like this in Amsterdam. And I think one of the successes that we had of why we got this apartment so quickly was because we acted so quickly. We had an agent to kind of back us up, and we had a really great cover letter that we put together on the spot. And the cover letter basically helps. It's a letter that you write to the landlord or to the agent of the landlord, and basically it talks about your story and your job and what kind, like giving them a sense of who you are, so that they know what kind of people are renting the apartment. So I wanted to provide our template that we used actually for you guys. So I'm going to link it in the description below on the template that we used. We made it look really pretty. We put our faces on it, and we like wrote this really beautiful thing in like a couple minutes, just to like tell our story and put the landlord at ease in terms of what kind of people are taking over that precious apartment that they bought, right? So yeah, I'll provide that for you guys, and I hope it comes in handy. But yeah, immediately by the end of that day, we got the listing, and we were so happy. We like popped champagne. We're like, yes.
We were very lucky for a couple of reasons. We had temporary housing, and two, that apartment hunting experience was very smooth and relatively easy.
Yeah, and we've heard stories from our friends that typically it might not take that quick. I mean, it might take a lot longer than you expect. And I think we just got lucky with this listing. I think it really does come to luck and how quickly you move once you find the apartment. So keep that in mind. It only took us like a week, but in general, it could take up to a month or 2 months to find that apartment that you love.
So that's why we gathered our experiences and also gathered some of our experiences from our friends and put together a couple of tips for you on how to find an apartment in Amsterdam.
So first off is pricing. Pricing, it's going to be around 1,400 to around 1,700 euros, excluding. Meaning excluding utilities and internet. So you're gonna be paying, let's say it's $1,400 for the base rent. It'll say on your pricing, and make sure to ask if it doesn't show on your listing, whether it's including or excluding. So if it says 1,500 including, it means it includes, usually includes utilities and maybe internet as well. So you need to clarify that. But we found that for expats, what we saw as listings in the area that we were looking for, center of Amsterdam, either the Pipe or the West, it'll be around 1,400 to 1,700 euros excluding. And on top of that, we pay around 100 to 200 euros for utilities every month. So
that includes water, electricity,
gas,
internet, and gas.
Water, yeah, internet, exactly. So it's very expensive, but if you're moving to Amsterdam, that's expected. I know in the comments, people are gonna be like, you can definitely move outside of Amsterdam center and it's gonna be a lot cheaper, and I totally agree with that.
But if you wanna live in the city, you wanna live in Amsterdam, that's the price that you should expect to pay. It's not cheap, but it's worth it.
It is. So in order to get qualified for your permanent apartment, most apartments are going to require for expats at least your salary to be 2 to 3 times of your monthly rental price. Meaning, if your rental price was, let's say, just to make it easy, $1,000 a month, then your salary, you need to prove to the landlord that you make at least 2,000 to 3,000, which is 2 to 3 times in your monthly salary. And usually the listing will specify if you need 2 or 3 or none. But what I found is if you are an expat and you're looking for those kinds of apartments that are listed in the public space, then they're gonna check your salary to make sure that you have a permanent job and that you are making enough money to pay your rent. And then on top of that, you're gonna need to pay a deposit for your first apartment. And that deposit is around another 2 to 3 months of your monthly rent. So if your monthly rent was $1,000, then you're gonna have to pay
1,000 euros?
1,000 euros, and you're gonna have to pay around $2,000 to $3,000, 3,000 euros for a deposit on top of your first month of rent on the first week of moving in. So again, very expensive, but that's just standard rental agreements across the world for major cities like this.
A quick tip, if you want to save some money, you can still work in Amsterdam but live in nearby cities. So that is also a great option because of the train system that we have in the Netherlands. So, if you want to save some dollars or euros, that's an option. Number 2, furnished versus unfurnished. So depending where you're coming from, the definitions of furnished versus unfurnished may differ when you're talking about it in Amsterdam. So unfurnished for a lot of places in Amsterdam could mean absolutely nothing in the apartment unit. When I say nothing, like literally the floors could be missing and there's no appliances. So
the tiles in the kitchen could be missing. There's no appliances, there's no laundry, no curtains.
I guess there's different tiers. So the next tier would be unfurnished with the tiles and appliances. And then there is the furnished option, which is what we have.
All right, number 3 is making sure that you find an apartment, even your first temporary apartment, able to register. So on a lot of listings, you're gonna be seeing like not including registration or including can be registered, and you're probably like, what is that? Basically, your identity needs to be registered to a specific Amsterdam address in order for you to get a BSN. So I don't know what BSN actually stands for.
We'll put it on the screen, but it's kind of like the equivalent of your North American social insurance number, the number, your identity to be able to work in the Netherlands.
Exactly. So in order for you to kind of like progress through like moving into Amsterdam to get a job, to get a bank account, like all of those things require a BSN, but you need a registered address before you can get a BSN, which allows you to get a bank account and get a job that can pay you. So those are kind of like the steps that you need to take, meaning even for your temporary apartment in the beginning, you're going to want to try to look for a place that allows you to register, or else you won't be able to do the rest of the steps of moving here.
Number 4, when you're searching for your temporary housing for the first month or second month while moving here to Amsterdam, some option to look at would be Airbnb long-term stay or Facebook groups.
Yeah, so Facebook groups are very popular here. Just look up like Amsterdam, expat, rentals or something like that, but we'll include a few groups that we're part of. We didn't use it just because we had the agent like we talked about, but I know a lot of our friends use Facebook groups to find their first apartment. So it's a really great way to, especially if you're not moving as a couple, there's a lot of people who are looking for roommates. So just really make sure that you scan through the listings, that you can register, that's the number one thing. And then also make sure that they're real people. And then the last tip is there are a lot of different resources in terms of how you find your permanent apartment living here. So for us, we found it through an agent, so we'll definitely put the links below in terms of the agent that we use to help us find our apartment. But other places that you can look for permanent housing is on the Facebook groups like we talked about. There are a lot of options there, and we'll include those Facebook groups that we use below. But the top 2 kind of like rental sites that people use here are Funda, I'll kind of like name it here, and then also Perarius. I have no idea how you say that word, but again, I'll put it on the screen, Perarius. And those are kind of like the top 2 rental sites that people use. And I know we have a couple of Dutch viewers here, so if you guys want to share what kind of websites that you use for rentals, please put it in the description below and help us out.
Bonus tip, if you are renting furnished, check if the refrigerator comes with a freezer, because in our case it did not, and we didn't realize until the day we moved in.
And to us, a freezer is pretty basic, like essential for an apartment. And that's one thing that we kind of missed. And the other thing that you want to make sure that you check, which is not as essential, is whether it has a laundry machine. Well, that's obviously something you should look for, but one other thing is a lot of apartments here don't come with dryers. So if you really need a dryer, because coming from North America, most of us have a dryer in our apartments. It's not common here to have an apartment as a basic necessity. We ourselves don't have a dryer, so we hang our clothes. But for you, if a dryer is an essential for you, make sure to check. Some of the washers are also mixed washer and dryer. Those combos, it won't dry as well as the North American machines when they're separate, but just check that when you're looking at the furnished apartments. But yes, that is our bonus tip. All right, and that is all the tips that we have and our experience of how we found our first apartment as a Canadian expat moving to Amsterdam. We hope that was helpful, and please let us know in the comments below. If you're moving to Amsterdam, let us know when you plan to move here. And if you already live here, let us know in the comments if you have any other tips for expats who are trying to find their first apartment in Amsterdam. If you enjoyed it, please like our video and subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we are here to provide more tips and resources for expats moving to Amsterdam.
Thanks for watching.
Bye!